Talk Sport. On air, online and on TV at Sky Channel 0108.
Crazy, but that's how it goes. Millions of people living as hoes. Yeah, but maybe.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham, and I'm delighted to say that sitting right next to me, fresh from a weekend of defeat, and I can only describe it as probably real pain and despair, is Mr. Mike Porky Parry. A very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. Pain and despair, not necessarily. Certainly great disappointment. Going down to Southampton, seeing everything get beaten by
You've handed fourth place to Arsenal, basically.
2 own goals. Well, we didn't hand anything to anybody. Don't mean to hand anything to anybody, but it just wasn't our day. We had 2 fantastic penalty appeals turned down, and we scored 2 own goals. Southampton didn't score.
They were quite good own goals as well. I don't know whether you saw, I put that out on social media, that these guys should become the new Everton strike force.
Oh, really?
2 good headers.
Sort of daft nonsense I would expect from you in a situation like that, but I didn't see it, thanks, because I don't spend all my time on a Saturday reading your banal and nonsensical tweets.
No, well, thank you very much indeed. Lots of other people read them, but never mind.
Do they?
Anyway, let's turn
Really?
to next weekend, because, you know, as we now get to what can only be described as not just the sharp end of the season, the very pointy end of the season, Everton play Manchester City. Now, because of what happened up at Anfield yesterday, an incredible shock victory by the Chelsea
was it a shock
team.
victory?
Yeah, of course it was.
So a shock. Was it a shock victory?
Well,
I think
it was a shock victory to you, because you predicted 3-0 to Liverpool.
Well, I don't think it was a shock victory in terms that you never know what Jose Mourinho can pull out of the bag, and he pulled it out of the bag, didn't he? And he's got a great record against Liverpool.
You could never have written that script, though, that Steven Gerrard, the man who has brought Liverpool to the great heights, is going to be responsible for the first goal going.
That'll haunt him for the rest of his life now.
Well, you know, I was watching a piece of a video that's been done, you know, by I think it was by the Times, actually, since that day, and it's that whole kind of soliloquy about, you know, how long will this haunt him for?
Yeah, exactly.
If they don't win the league, will it haunt him forever? I'm not sure that Steven Gerrard is that fragile a character.
No, he will. Come on, he spent the whole of his career at Liverpool looking for a Premier League title. Yeah. He gets on the cusp of it, and remember, it was on the same bit of turf where just 2 weeks ago he got the huddle after the game they won, and said, right, let's go to Norwich and make sure we do the same there and all that.
Let's not slip up, were his words.
Exactly. Don't let us slip up, and he slips up, and I feel sorry for the boy in a way, you know, because his greatest moment may not come about because at his own hand he fouled up.
Yeah, his foot even.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about Everton Manchester City, because this morning, I believe you were on the breakfast show. I wasn't up early enough to hear. Well, actually, I was up early enough, but I was out with the dog. I was up at 5:30 this morning, taking the dog out for.
Good. That's a good time to get up. I get up at 4:30 usually.
I can actually hear the cocks crowing.
Yeah, that's right. It's a better time to get up. The dawn chorus now starts about 3:30, believe it or not. So I'm always awake by 4:30.
But anyway, so you're on the Alan Brazil Sports Breakfast because Andy Gray was also on the Alan Brazil Sports Breakfast. He was a great Everton player, of course. He says that Everton fans should look forward to Everton not winning against Manchester City in order that Liverpool don't win the title. I was shocked to hear that.
Well, I'll tell you what he said, because this has been repeated in this morning's Telegraph, OK? Chris Bascombe, who's the Merseyside-based reporter for the Telegraph, has written a piece which says Everton's fans torn over title help for rivals. Victory over City, good hand trophy to Liverpool. Martinez's men still need points to guarantee Europe, OK? And they quote Andy in this on the breakfast show this morning. Former Everton striker said on TalkSport, Peter Reid and I were talking about it last night. We think maybe Evertonians for once in their life may not be too upset if they get beaten this week. The players will try and do their job the best they can, but I've got a funny feeling many thousands of Evertonians, for 1 week only, will not mind if they lose the game. Yeah. Well, I'm an Evertonian. I will mind very much if we lose the game.
But lots of other Evertonians have been agreeing with him, and some have been agreeing with you. It seems to have split the camp, if you like.
It's split the camp a bit, but I get the majority feeling that most of them agree with Andy. But, I mean, do they really? Can you really say you want to go to Goodison? I'm due to take my nephew to his first game ever at Goodison. It's against the team who were champions 2 seasons ago, probably the wealthiest team in the world. I want to see Everton give them a good pasting, because we still need the points with Tottenham breathing up down our necks, right? And maybe trying to overtake.
That.
Sorry,
I'm glad you said that. I think you were going to say something else.
But also you've got to remember that how on earth can you possibly go around trying to gerrymander results? Because I'm not overly convinced that Liverpool can get 3 points at Palace the following Monday night.
Yeah, well, Palace, we thought might do something more against Manchester City than they did. I mean, Manchester City kind of rolled over them. You'd have to say, if you're Manuel Pellegrini now, and you are Manchester City, I mean, this is the biggest game of the season for them. So they pretty much are going to go out and win it, you would think.
Well, I think City will beat Everton on the basis that those 11 players who line up know they've got to win 3 games to become the champions of England.
Yeah.
And the motivation to do that is enormous. And, of course, they're an incredibly talented team with incredibly talented players. So I think on balance, if I was a neutral betting man, I'd say, well, City will probably win this.
Yeah.
But the idea that Everton will in any way assist them to victory is anathema to me.
No. Well, I don't think
anathema.
But I don't think that's what Andy Gray's suggesting either. I think what he's saying is that if Everton were to lose the game, and by a bizarre coincidence, a happenstance, Liverpool then don't win the league, then Evertonians would be happy about it. But you know, the thing that worries me most about this is that if you are a Liverpool fan, the fact is that you're going to Goodison because, you know, I used to think that maybe I was some kind of curse on Everton, but I'm thinking now that maybe you are, because you went to Southampton at the weekend. Yeah. They lost. Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you this question. I don't know whether you can think back to all the games you've seen this season. Have you actually seen Everton win this year?
Yeah, of course I have. Seen them win at West Ham. Right. Seen them win at Fulham. Yeah. Seen them win at...
I thought they drew at Fulham, didn't they?
Well, we've played Fulham in the League Cup and we played them in the League. Yes, you're right, they drew. Some beat Chelsea at home in the first home game of the season. Right. Got a good record against top 4, better one than we had under Davy Moyes. So I'm not a curse under any circumstances at all. It's just the stress and the occasion sometimes gets to me, and I overcompensate for that in emotional damage afterwards.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. That. You know, you've got a man who's had a bit of a rough weekend because it's difficult when you went into the weekend thinking it could be top 4 coming, and now it turns out that that's pretty much not.
You've got a load of fans in West Ham. In Southampton. You didn't know about,
I didn't know that.
Because afterwards I went to see my mate Flash, that's Gordon Watson, who used to play for Southampton, so he's a local hero. Yeah. And I didn't know that Southampton's got a very trendy street called Oxford Street, okay? Yeah, apparently it used to be a bit of a dump, but now it's been all renovated.
Yeah, I've only really been to Southampton sort of down by the docks.
Yeah, that's all I've ever been to. By the way, the traffic getting out of Southampton's ground, just a nightmare.
Really?
I mean, nothing moves for about 20 minutes. I walked. I got a cab and I said, this is no good, pal, thank you. Yeah. Paid him off £5. There was only like £4 on the metre or something. But I said, and we hadn't moved.
Oh, so you gave him a £1 tip?
I gave him a £1 tip. Said, here, you have that, mate.
Generous of you.
Yeah, of course it was.
Well, there's nothing to be remarkably sort of happy about. You gave the guy a £1 tip.
Yeah, but hang on, I hadn't gone anywhere. I hadn't moved, and I gave him £5. Do you understand? That's my point.
Right, well, his meter said £4, so you owed him £4 anyway.
I had moved. So I got out and walked, and I walked up and met a Flash. And anyway, we went to this wine bar in Oxford Street, where apparently...
Is it anything like the Oxford Street in London, then?
No. It is more like a street out of sort of EastEnders or something like that. You know what I mean? Right. A busy street.
Fictitious street.
Yeah, busy fictitious street with wine bars. It also got his wine bars and houses. It's as simple as that. Nice street. It's like Georgian, you know. And we settled outside in one of these bars because Flash likes a cigarette, despite the fact that he used to be a professional athlete, a bit like you, except that you're not a professional athlete, of course. You're just a
Never
guy,
have been either.
Just a guy who sits outside smoking all the time, right?
Well, especially in nice weather.
Yeah. And anyway, a group of lads were coming down the pavement on the other side of the road, quite merry. It looks like they might have had a sherbet or two.
Southampton fans?
Not necessarily. More like young yuppies, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And hadn't been to the game, for instance. And anyway, they came over, and I thought, this must be Flash's local fan club, you know, considering he played for Southampton. Anyway, you won't believe it. All he wanted to talk to me about was you.
Oh, really?
And the 2 mics, and the overnight show, and the podcast, and how they love it all, and Talk Sport's great, and all that. And poor old Flash was sitting there, didn't even recognise him. And, I felt like a bit of an imposter. But I did all the old pictures and things, and it was all very, very friendly. So whoever you were, guys, thanks very much indeed. Really nice to see you.
Yeah, and there will be another podcast out later on today.
There certainly will be.
Later. Let's talk about Alan Pardew, because
I was going to say,
are in a bad place, are they not?
I was going to say, I'm glad I'm not a Newcastle fan. I've got a real sort of soft spot for Newcastle. I lived up there, worked on the Evening Chronicle. Right. It's got an incredibly great local identity, the culture of the North East, Newcastle. I don't know how much time you spent there.
I've never spent any time in Newcastle at all, but I know a lot of Geordies who are mates of mine who have since moved to London and all that.
That's right,
and they're great. I mean, I've been invited up to watch a couple of Newcastle games, but one of the things I loved about last night was the fact that Newcastle fans were cheering Arsenal every time they got a corner or a throw-in.
Unbelievable.
Because it was the only thing they could do.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But it's got fantastic regional identity. I love going to Newcastle. I flew up last time on the plane and, spent a couple of hours in Newcastle.
Yeah, you were telling me, I think, they
yeah.
had this great metro system.
Yeah, they've got this great metro system, gets you all over the place and all that kind of stuff, but, it's near the coast and all that kind of stuff. Anyway.
But it's part of that identity that they've got. Really, one of the reasons they don't really like Ashley, they don't really like Pardew, because they're cockneys as far as they're concerned.
I think it is.
They want the Kevin Keegans, they want Alan Shearer, they want somebody like that.
During the days of Alan Shearer taking over temporarily, the whole plan was to have a Geordie chairman, which they had in that portly chap who Shepherd, Freddie Shepherd. They had an owner who was a pure Geordie who made a fortune building the Metro Centre in Gateshead.
Yeah.
Do you remember his name?
No.
Yeah, I'll tell you that in a minute.
I can't keep coming up with every single name.
No. And they had a Geordie captain in Alan Shearer, and then who became temporary manager. And they called it the Geordie Nation, and it's not really the Geordie Nation now, is it? It's more like the Southern Nations, you quite rightly say. Yeah. But there's no relationship.
But is that the heart of it, though? Do you think, or do you think it's just because Pardew has become this kind of laughable figure? I mean, he was back for his first game on the touchline, wasn't he? Yeah,
and he's had 6 consecutive defeats. Yeah. So I'm sorry, any player that goes through 6 consecutive defeats is going to find himself under pressure to lose his job. But he is a mate of Ashley's, apparently. Mr. Ashley, I should say, because he's a billionaire.
He is.
And you've got to be respectful of people with lots of money.
John Hall is the name of the
John
other guy.
Hall, that's right, absolutely right, yeah. And frankly, I can't see how it can last for... I can't see how it can last for Alan Pardew, because with the run of... And by the way, he doesn't seem to have much regret about these lost 6 games. No. He just says, I'm going to get things together for the next game, and that's all going to be okay.
And also hear him saying, we need the fans to get behind the team. Well, the fans are a bit fed up getting behind the team when the team don't perform.
There's no more loyal fans in the country than Newcastle fans because, again, of this regional thing. Once you drive up to Leeds, where the M1 ends... Yeah. There's then another 100 miles between you and civilization, which is Newcastle.
And that's the A1M, isn't it?
That's the A1 and the A1M, yeah. And in between, there are some
I understood that. Why do they have the A1M?
I've no idea. Why do they have the A3M, which I go on down to Portsmouth all the time?
But
I've
no
idea.
Mean, though?
Well, they just sort of upgrade a dual carriageway, don't they, into 3 lanes or something like that.
It's not really a motorway.
Well, it kind of is.
Does it have a blue sign?
Yeah, blue signs. Yeah, they're blue signs.
Motorway, then, 'cause if you have blue sign,
they have blue signs. Yeah.
Why don't they just call it the M1?
Well, I can't answer that one, Mike, because it's not the M1, because it's the A1.
Yeah, but these are the kind of things that, I worry about, because
you worry.
Important things.
What I'm saying is, you go up there, right, you get to Leeds, and then you're into the northeast wilderness. Now, there's some very nice places up there, like Sunderland and Middlesbrough and Hartlepool and all that kind of stuff. But actually, in terms of the road, it just goes straight to the Tyne Tunnel. You go under the Tyne Tunnel to North Tyneside, turn left and go into Newcastle, and you're there. And it's a magnificent city and all that.
I mean, I've driven past it many times, past the Angel of the North.
Yeah, exactly.
On my way up to Edinburgh.
Yeah, and this sort of isolationism thing about the northeast of England, it makes the Geordies special. So I feel sorry. They've got a very big club, 51,000 fans every season. And by the way, the advantage of having a one-club city, unlike Sheffield, unlike Liverpool, unlike Manchester, unlike London and Birmingham, obviously, must give them a tremendous advantage in terms of pulling power for their fans and all that. And yet they've never taken advantage of it properly. Something about Newcastle, there's a malaise about Newcastle, which will never make them a great football club. And I think it's all down to the Jarrow March, because when those lads marched south and looked for work in the Depression days and were given, the old bums rush by politicians in London, they have felt that they've been under siege ever since. And I'm sure that mentality... What are you laughing at?
I have no idea what you're going on about.
Well, you know what the Jarrow March was?
I know what the Jarrow March was,
well, I think they go right back to the Jarrow March. I mean, for instance, did you know that when you go into pubs in Newcastle now and you say, give me a bottle of Brown, love, please, a bottle of Newcastle Brown, they give you that and they give you a half-pint glass. And do you know why they do that?
Why?
Because people were so poor during the Jarrow March that 2 men could only afford one bottle of Brown,
rubbish.
Which they share between the 2 of them.
That's ridiculous.
It is not rubbish.
They don't give you 2 glasses, do they?
Well, why do they give you a half-pint glass?
Well, they haven't got any pints up there.
Rubbish. Don't be so ridiculous. They used to sell things like Exhibition and Vaux Bronze, Vaux Silver, Vaux Gold.
I spent a lot of time at the pubs up there.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I used to go drinking around Wall's End and Wallsend, and Tynemouth and all that kind of stuff. Some fantastic pubs. Salutation Inn in Tynemouth. Oh, there's
just hit upon a rich vein of porkies.
Yeah.
Finally, we found your specialist subject.
Yeah.
It's drinking and pubs.
The stuffed dog.
We've got to go.
Stuffed dog in a pub in a glass case in Tynemouth.
Stuffed dog. Mike Porky Parry and myself, Mike Graham, back next on TalkSport. This is Talk Sport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. Together we are the two Mikes. There'll be a podcast available a little bit later on iTunes. Mike, we were talking about drinking. I have to say, I've never seen you so enthusiastic about something for a long time. And I think rather than that Shakespeare test that we gave the other day, and we found something about that Shakespeare test, by the way, because...
well, you think you have?
No, well,
I deny it.
Well, you may deny it, but, many people will have heard what happened last Friday morning on the podcast and live on the show here when we gave you a Shakespeare test. And inexplicably, you got 4 out of 5 right. Okay, and for some reason we thought that you were cheating. Anyway, we found some evidence of that. Well, I'll be putting it out on social media a little bit later on. But I found your specialist stuff. If you ever did go on Mastermind, which is something you've talked about many times, about the Beatles or whatever else, Shakespeare, any number of Elizabethan history periods. Drinking, I think, would absolutely have to be your specialist subject.
Well, lots of
your knowledge.
ridiculous comments.
To remember the names of pubs that you went to 25, 30 years ago is an extraordinary thing.
I've been back to them since. I do visit the North East occasionally, and get up there and Everton are playing there or something like that. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, but you can't name the streets, though, but you can name the pubs.
Well, I used to live in Wallsend, and I haven't been back there for about 30 years. Yeah. But the pub that I used first in Wallsend was called the Northumberland Arms on Northumberland Street. Right. Believe it or not. I mean, you remember that because you're in Northumberland, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
that's an easy one.
The only time I went back there to have a look at it, I had the most terrible shock as I came round the corner of the High Street and found it had been knocked down quite a few years ago. And
they probably went out of business after you left.
Yeah, probably they did, yeah. They had a fantastic jukebox in there, and on the first day of being a journalist trainee, I got in the pub with a couple of young girl trainees as well, very attractive women. And to impress them...
One of them's not a famous television star now. And columnist.
No.
There was another one. I don't want to mention any names, obviously.
No.
Pack drill.
No, they did very well, though, and they are quite well known names in our business. But point is, I thought, this is where it all starts, so... To get them in the mood, I put on that record by Cockney Rebel, Come Up and Meet Me, Make Me Smile.
Come up and see me, make me
Come
smile.
and see me, make me smile. And I started giving them the eye,
Steve
while
Harley.
I was...
You look like a pirate.
Hey?
You look like a pirate.
No. Because I was winking, though. I gave a bit of the eye, you know what I mean? And asked them to listen to the music. I was very romantic like that in those days.
And you probably lived in a bedsit at the time, did you?
I lived in an upstairs flat with 2 other blokes above a terraced house.
Yeah.
And
Who could resist that sort of opportunity?
Well, exactly, yeah, with 3 really small, cramped bedrooms, Yeah. But that was life in those days. It was great.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. But more seriously, story at the weekend, which you spotted, about how 17-year-olds are having liver transplants because they're drinking so much so early in their lives.
I can't believe that they're actually having liver transplants. But the headline, you're quite right, Mike, says boozy kids aged 17 need liver swaps. Children are boozing so much, some need new liver by 17. A surgeon has warned. But it doesn't actually say that anybody's had a liver transplant at 17. He's saying the way it's going, that is going to be what they're going to have to do because they start drinking at 12, 13 or 14.
Right. Now, and the organs haven't properly formed at that point.
No, they haven't properly formed and they could be badly damaged and all that kind of stuff. Alcohol is now the top cause of death in men aged 16 to 24. How about that?
That's 16, ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, 16 to 24-year-olds. Now, what he raises a spectre of in here, and I'm fully in support of this, and I would put my full weight behind a campaign to get this done, is to raise the drinking age from 17 to 21.
Yeah.
No, it's 18, isn't it? It's 18. Yeah. I'd raise it to 21.
Right.
Because then kids would start drinking at 18.
It's 21 in lots of other parts of the world, isn't it?
Well, in a lot of states in America, it's 21, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I think in New York, it's 21. They're not the kids into bars, unless they're 21. And I would go with that. And I tell you why I'd go with that, because we always nick a couple of years. I mean, for instance, what age did you start drinking?
I've probably had my first drink around about 14 or something like that.
Where would that have been?
I was in Spain, actually. I was on a golfing trip with my parents used to be in this thing called the European Press Golf Society.
Oh, right.
And I was quite a promising young golfer, funnily enough, at the age of 14.
Yeah.
And I won the guest prize.
When you're a little lighter than you are now.
Slightly lighter, yeah, but I could
about
still...
half the weight, I would say.
Probably even less than that. I was a child, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I see the pictures now, and one of the things was that it was in La Manga, funnily enough.
La Manga, we like that.
And we played this competition there, and because I wasn't old enough to be a member of this society, and it was all press people from Germany and England playing against each other, it was when I sort of developed my love for newspapers, because I met all these guys who seemed to travel around the world drinking and playing golf.
Sure.
And I thought, that sounds like
good
quite a
idea
job for me. Anyway, so I won the guest prize by shooting something like a sort of an 86 or 87 or something off an 18 handicap. And for some reason, one of the journalists at the Do decided it'd be a great idea for me to celebrate by drinking some sangria.
Oh, great.
And I remember staggering up to collect the prize and sort of staggering back down, and I don't remember much else about it.
Right, OK. My first experience was at a wedding when I was about 11 or 12, and I had a baby sham. And, I felt dreadful for days afterwards, literally. And then when I was about 15, right, I had a holiday job in the summer in the warehouse of a supermarket. And I remember the heaviest boxes that I couldn't move around were the Omo.
Right.
The Daz.
Yeah.
No, the Daz and the Omo.
I remember that,
the Daz and the Omo were so big and bulky, and I was only about 15 then as well.
Did you have a forklift truck?
No, I didn't have a forklift truck. You had to do it all by hand, get them off the lorries and get them into the warehouse and get them out into the shop and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, there's a guy there called Pete Kennedy. I remember him so well because I bought some Beach Boys records off him and he'd written his name on them because he used to go to parties in those days. He took all your records.
Well, you always write your name on your records.
Yeah, exactly. Well. So you could bring him back again and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, one lunchtime, he said, come on, we're going to have a walk into town. It was just on the edge of town.
And he was older than you, presumably.
He was 2 years older than me. He was 17. And he was just on the edge of town. So, come on, we're going to town. So as we walk towards, there's a pub there called the Bowling Green in Brook Street in Chester. He said, come on, let's go in and have a
pub name you remember. This is extraordinary.
That's right.
You can't remember anybody's name.
That's
right. You couldn't remember Freddie Shepherd's name. You couldn't remember, John Hall's name. You remember the names of all the pubs.
It's true. But anyway, he said, come on. And I said, I can't. I said, I've never been in a pub before in my life. He said, come on, you'll be all right. Come on, go in. And it was a really old-fashioned pub. It had one of those tables that you play that ball game on.
Bar billiards?
Yeah,
maybe?
bar billiards, that's it. Yeah, with little wooden things on it.
Yeah, with little mushrooms.
It was so old-fashioned, I couldn't believe it. It looked like something out of the Second World War.
Oh.
Anyway, he said, sit over there in the corner, and I did, on this big bench, and he went and got 2 pints of lager and lime, and I had a pint of that, and I don't know how I got it down.
I presume you didn't have a beard at this point.
Oh, no, I don't have a beard. Of course not,
no. Did you look young? Because when I was young, I looked really young. When I was 14 or 15, I looked ridiculously young.
Yeah, you look ridiculously old now, but anyway, that's probably the way.
It's all relative.
Yeah, but anyway, when we got back to the warehouse, right, I couldn't tell the Omo from the Daz, and I got I got a terrible mess, honestly. My eyes were cross-eyed and all that, and that was 1 pint of lager and lime.
Right.
And that was
the start. You have to go for a lie down?
Well, I had to get home as quickly as I could, and that was the start of my drinking career. And
well, my other problem.
You wish you'd never had your first pint sometimes.
Yeah, well, the other problem for me was when I was at the same age, about 14, I started working in this Hungarian bakery in Hampstead.
Hungarian bakery,
yeah, which was and it was run by this guy who'd escaped from Hungary.
It was Hungarian, yeah.
He was Hungarian, yeah, but in 1956 he'd escaped from Hungary when the Russian tanks had rolled in, right?
The uprising.
Armed only with his recipe book, and he'd become one of the top patisseries.
His recipe book? What was his name?
His name was Louis Permeyer. He's still the shop is still there in Heath Street.
Did he become like a famous celeb chef?
Panorama actually did something on him because he was one of the very successful Hungarians. He drove a Rolls Royce with gold handlebars.
Drove a Rolls Royce?
Yeah, the guy was a millionaire.
Good.
But he started drinking at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Did he?
Veuve Clicquot champagne from 7 till about 11.
Yeah.
He would then move on to Carlsberg Special Brew from 11 until about 5.
Right.
And then he'd start drinking vodka.
Good.
And that was the culture I was working in. That was my first job.
I used to have an editor, right, and he used to get called into his office at 10:30 in the morning. Morning conference was 10, that was half an hour, and then he'd go out, and then he'd get a call back from the secretary, so the editor wants to see you, and he'd thrust a glass of scotch into your hand, and at least 4 fingers of scotch, that's how they measure it, isn't it, the Wild West, how many fingers of scotch do you want? And if you refused it, your career was in jeopardy. And a colleague of yours and mine once twice refused the scotch and said, it's too early for me, I don't drink scotch, something like that. He never worked at the paper again. Seriously.
Fortunately, it's not like that anymore.
And that editor would always, he'd go out for lunch at about just after 12. His car would pull up out the front, the Jag, and he'd be off to the Savoy Grill. And he wouldn't come back till 4 o'clock. And then only in time to sort of, have a cursory glance at the paper and get out for the 5:30 opening.
Yeah, but they sold a lot more in those days, funnily enough. Mike Porky Parry and myself, Mike Graham, we are the 2 Mikes. More coming up next.
You and I are not the same. You say you like the sun, I like the rain.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. We are the 2 Mikes, and we've got an awful lot more to talk about. We're going to be on for 3 hours, of course, on Thursday night, going into Friday morning. So we'll be able to develop some of these thoughts that we've had. But here's something I was going to ask you about.
Yeah, go on.
George Clooney, one of the great bachelors of our time.
Well, he has been married before, though.
He's always said that he would never. No, he said that he would. Very many years ago, perhaps. But he's always in recent times when he's dated all these kind of glamorous women from the showbiz world and from modelling and everything else. He's always said that he's not really ready. Doesn't want to be a father. He's not really ready for commitment. He got engaged the other day to an English lawyer, it turns out.
Well,
somebody by the name of Amel Alamuddin.
Yeah, well, obviously he's fallen for, hasn't he, and decided he's going to do it. But I think he's made a mistake. I mean, he's 50.
Why?
Is he 53?
He's 52.
52, there you go.
About the same age as me.
Yeah, about the same age as you. Yeah, sure.
He's the same age as me.
You can't change your lifestyle at that age. It's just impossible. Yeah. I mean, the idea now of me suddenly meeting a woman who I thought, I think I'll get get married is ludicrous.
Do you think the search for the first Mrs. Parry's over then?
No.
We could announce that.
No.
It's all, we'd have almost as much impact as George Clooney saying he's getting engaged.
No. The search for the first Mrs. Parry is still going on.
Is it?
Because there might be a woman out there. But what I'm saying is she's going to have to be a very special woman because I can't imagine changing my lifestyle now.
Have to be very special.
After all these years. You know, it's... I mean, you adopt a way of life which totally suits you. It's tailored to you like a well-fitting suit, unlike the ill-fitting suits that you often wear when I see you socially. And I'm having a laugh. And I just don't know how you could change it. How could you change it? How could you wake up in the morning and say, would you like a cup of tea? Or somebody waking you and saying, would you like a cup of tea? Or going into the kitchen and finding somebody sitting in your seat at your table, which you wanted to sit in.
I totally sympathise with you. Let's just make this official. Should we make this official?
Breaking news on Talk Sport.
The search for the first Mrs. Parry is over.
No, it's not.
It's over.
No, it's not.
He's finally given up.
No, I haven't given up
the ghost.
I haven't given up because
Well, actually, you must feel a great weight off his shoulders.
No. That special woman
That's
might
just
still...
you taking off your jacket.
That special woman... with my wallet in it. That special woman might still come along and it might just blow my socks off, you know what I mean? In fact...
You can pay for that if you wish.
Yeah, well, I suppose you could. But in fact, I tell you what does happen to gentlemen of my age at this time of life.
Really?
You sometimes suddenly find that you're re-engaged to a lady you knew 25 years ago. You know what I mean? That's happened all the time. That happens all the time.
What, you mean people that you sort of meet again for some reason you haven't seen
you know,
for ages?
everybody's got their first love. And I went with my first love
Who
for
was
5.
your first love then?
Trudy. And that was for 5 years, from the age of 16 to 21.
Was that before the New York Welcoming Committee or after?
Oh, yeah, way before. Way before, mate. And you know, you always think to yourself... You know, if that happened...
where is Trudy now?
I've no idea. I don't
Maybe you
know.
should start a search for Trudy.
Well, I'm not sure that's a very good idea, because...
Is she married to somebody else, perhaps?
She may well be. I mean, funny enough, I last saw her 20 years ago, and she had got married, but was separated.
Oh, you see, because that's funny enough what happens. Mostly to a lot of women in their 40s, I think it's beginning to happen now, not so much in their 50s.
Right.
But you meet women that have decided to go off and have kids and get married. Kids start to grow up. They grow apart from their husband, and suddenly they're looking for something more interesting.
She had a little boy, but he's only about 2 or 3. He's in a pram still.
He'd be 22 or 3 now.
Yeah, he would be 22 or 3 now. You're absolutely right. So I don't know what the answer to that one is. All I know is that, you know, you often think to yourself, well, if only, you know. But the thing is...
I can't imagine you being married, though.
No. I'm not responsible enough to be married, right? Yeah. First of all, I'm far too selfish in wanting to
You're
do
also
things...
a complete misogynist.
My way. I'm not a misogynist
yes,
at all.
Are.
No, I love women.
You love women, but not as equal partners.
Yes, I do, and I'm always very respectful to them.
No, you don't think they should be equal. You don't think they should make the same money as you. You don't think they should buy you dinner. You don't think they should have jobs that are better than yours.
No, I don't think they should buy me dinner, but I've spent tens of thousands of pounds on women over the years.
That doesn't make you love women. Well, that makes you a misogynist.
No, not at all. But anyway, look, you're not listening to me. What I'm saying is, I didn't think I was responsible enough to be married.
You were quite right about that.
Yeah, I always thought that if I made the mistake of having children, then...
That would have been a huge mistake.
Yeah, it would have been a disaster. Because
you wouldn't have been able to spend any time with them.
Well, it's not just that, but I just thought, I don't think any marriage that I was involved in would last, and therefore, why would I want to subject children to a broken marriage? Of course, that's not something that bothered you, Mike, during your lifetime.
I wonder how long it would take you to get around to that.
You know, we've got to speak the facts.
5 minutes at least.
Got to speak the facts.
Without you mentioning my unfortunately failed first marriage.
Only
marriage,
actually. And what about the dozen failed relationships in between?
Well, what about that?
Well, I mean, you just fail.
Well, no, it's not a question of failed. Well, it depends on what your definition. What's your definition of a failed relationship then? One that ends?
Yes,
because they all end, mate.
Yeah,
I've got news for you.
No, but you know,
they don't last forever. It's not like some kind of old,
with decent
ridiculous
people,
kitchen sink drama from the 60s.
With decent people, the relationship only ends with death.
Really?
You know, for everybody else, it's just, easy come, easy go.
Yeah, you see, this is what I mean.
Gibbet and all
this
that.
is what I mean. You are so steeped in the past that you think people should be married forever, and anybody who isn't married forever is somehow a bad person.
You should have known you weren't responsible enough to get married when you first got married, because you've had a roving eye all your life.
And I didn't particularly want to get married.
But you did.
I got married because she asked me 3 times, and by the 3rd time, I couldn't really come up with any reason not to.
Well, you should have done the decent thing and be strong-willed and walked away from it.
Yeah, I should
because
have done.
the result of it was you had children, which you then abandoned. You know,
I have 4 fantastic children for whom I'm very grateful.
And the first 2 you hardly saw for about 15 years.
Absolute rubbish.
No, that's not absolute rubbish at all. Anyway, look, I'm not getting
years.
into that. I'm not going to be critical of you. Every man has to plough his own furrow in life.
I think we should all just be very thankful that, one, the women of this country are now safe because the search for the first Mrs. Parry is over, so no more chatting up random people in wine bars when you've had too many bottles of Pinot Grigio. And 2,
really?
you didn't manage to produce any progeny which would be wandering around like little parries, annoying everybody.
Well, I haven't left broken hearts behind or abandoned children crying on the doorstep because they, are latchkey kids abandoned by their parents and all that kind of stuff, have I? So, to that extent, I deserve praise.
Sort of ridiculously traditional about these things.
I deserve praise.
That's why no woman would put up with you.
Yeah, well, you say they don't put up with me. But as for George Clooney, well
George Clooney apparently has put a ring on this woman's finger, which is very unlike anything that he said he would ever do. And, people are saying, of course, well, she's Oxford educated, she's very intelligent, and he would only go for some woman like that, because he's become quite active in all sorts of political arenas.
Well, they always do, don't they?
No, but he's actually been able to carry it off. I mean, some of them do, but don't quite become convincing. But, I mean, his dad was a political journalist, and he's been steeped in this kind of, he's a very well-read guy, he's well-educated.
The most famous actor turned politician was Ronald Reagan, who became President of the United States of America.
He wasn't what you would describe as somebody who was incredibly bright, would you?
Well, yes, you would.
Why?
You've got to be pretty bright to get to the White House, mate.
Really?
Incredibly
You
bright,
believe
I
that,
would say.
do you?
Yeah, of course I believe that.
Well, Ronald Reagan wasn't one of them.
Yes, he was, and Ronald Reagan was also a pretty, pretty popular.
He was shrewd
with the women. Who was his wife, Barbara Stanwyck?
I think at
His
one
first
point.
wife
I think at one point.
Barbara Stanwyck, I think. Yeah.
Well, the biggest thing about Ronald Reagan was that he nearly got the part of Casablanca instead of Humphrey Bogart.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was offered to him first, and he turned it down.
Is that right?
Can you imagine if Casablanca had been made with Ronald Reagan?
Well,
he would have been like that. Well,
yeah.
So he always used to start every sentence.
Of all the bars in all the world.
Do you remember that press conference he gave
in all the world,
in the midst of the Cold War sort of being sorted out? And he went to give a press conference, and he thought the microphones were switched off because the press conference hadn't started
He said, "Let's
yet.
bomb Russia,"
and he
didn't he?
came out and went, "The bombing begins in 10 minutes."
Yeah, that's right.
I thought it was a great joke, but
it's a great joke.
It wasn't a great
joke.
joke.
But I respect him because he told Gorbachev at their meeting in Iceland, it's like this, Gorby, right? For every ruble you spend, because the Russians tried to pretend that the ruble and the dollar had parity, that it was 1-on-1, where in fact it was about 100 to 1. It was about 100 rubles to the pound, to the dollar in the real world.
Well, he managed to bankrupt Russia.
That's what I'm saying.
Period.
So he said,
the Soviet Union, which is cool.
It's like this, Gorby. For every ruble you spend, I will spend $10.
Yeah.
And Gorbachev went home and said, the game's up. We're going to, we just can't afford to keep up with the United States. We better get rid of communism, abandon it.
Yeah.
So they did.
And now Russia's richer than America, bizarrely.
Yeah. Now, this is a good question for you. How would you describe Russia's political system now?
How would I describe it?
Yes.
As a dictatorship.
Is it a communist dictatorship?
No.
What sort of dictatorship
It's just a
is it?
dictatorship. It's a free market dictatorship, I suppose you might call
well,
it.
You can't have a free
really
market
have a free market
dictatorship.
dictatorship.
No, exactly. So that's what I'm saying.
Capitalist dictatorship, perhaps.
A capitalist dictatorship?
Yeah.
And how does that work?
Well, it works with having one guy at the top politically who decides on who is going to be in favour and who's going to be not in favour, which companies are going to be allowed to operate.
See, you can't describe the political system in Russia, can you? Because it's impossible to describe. If you had to describe it...
Well, I'm describing it.
Well, you're not really. You're just sort of, load of balderdash and rubbish about...
I mean, you want me to answer you a quite deep political question in 10 seconds and then tell me that you don't like the answer, therefore somehow I can't describe it.
I mean, if I asked you to describe the political system in China, you'd say communist, yes?
Not really, no.
Well, it is.
Nothing's communist. Well,
the political system is communist.
No, it's not anymore.
Of course it is.
Well, why have they got McDonald's there?
Because that's a capitalist economy in a communist-run country.
You can't explain it, can you?
Of course I can. It's a communist political system because there's no freedom of vote, but it is a capitalist economy.
No, it's not a market economy in rural China, though.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid it is where all the wealth is created.
Where
all the wealth is created.
You can't explain it.
Of course I can explain it.
You shouldn't have gone down this road because you're going to get stuck in a cul-de-sac.
No, rubbish.
Anyway, let's talk about something you know about, because I spotted something this weekend as well that I thought you'd be interested in. And it's all about how goalkeepers getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, you once said that this would happen.
I did.
And everybody mocked you and said, Mike Perry's come up with another one of these crazy ideas about racehorses with wing mirrors and Formula 1 cars with windscreen wipers and all that kind of ejector seats and all that.
I'm going to give this to Bill Edgar, who's a columnist in The Times, okay? And it says, Billy's Brain Busted, something does every Monday morning. This, for once, has vindicated my campaign over all these years, if not decades. And I'm going to start this campaign again now with absolute...
campaigning you're doing on this
I'm going to start campaigning now with absolute energy and authority, because listen to this. The average height of 38 goalkeepers used in the Premier League this season is 6 foot 3 1/4 inches.
Right.
In
That's not particularly tall, is it?
Sorry?
That's not particularly tall.
That's the average height.
Okay.
It's the average height. In 1973-74, how many years ago is that? 35?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Not quite as many as that.
Nearly 40, 74, isn't it? 74, 30, nearly 40 years. It was a shade less than 6 feet. At the same rate of increase, the average goalkeeper at the end of this century will be 6 foot 10 1/2 tall. And in 22... 6 foot 10 1/2 tall. And in 2251, the goalkeepers will be 8 feet, which is the same height as the crossbar now.
They'll have to change the shape of the TVs then, won't they?
Well, they'll have to change the shape of the grounds. They'll have to make the grounds bigger because any man who's 8 foot tall will have a stride which will enable him one day to run the 100 metres in 1 second flat.
Presumably the crowd will all be about 8 feet tall
as
well.
Yeah. We'll all be 8 feet tall.
They'll have to change everything. They'll have to change the doors.
Yeah,
they'll have to change the turnstiles.
Well, they should be changing the doors now.
The gantries. I mean, there'll be guys like you.
Exactly.
Instead of 4 feet like you, they'll be 8 feet tall.
No, don't be ridiculous.
To create a much bigger area for the press.
Don't be ridiculous. I'll be proportionally as big as everybody else. But the point is, I noticed this before the rest of the world did.
It's true. You are in many ways a visionary.
I am a visionary because, listen, I went to see HMS Victory, which is in Dock at Portsmouth, obviously, near to where I live. Right. And you've only got to look round that once to realise how different the world is today.
It was a very small boat,
small little doorways, which were only about 4 feet tall.
Funny enough, I was in a whaling boat, actually, when I was over in Connecticut last month. And you're absolutely right. The doors are tiny, the stairways are tiny, because the average height in those days is about 5'3".
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. And so, now people have got to wake up, and if the goalkeepers are going to be 8 feet in the year 2251, you don't only have to build the goals bigger, you have to build the pitches bigger, which means the grounds have got to be bigger. So eventually you're going to have to knock down all our football grounds anyway and rebuild them twice the size.
I mean, is it not possible that they've kind of over-projected this?
No.
It's going to be about 1,000 years before people are 8 feet tall.
No, not at all.
They have to change everything.
In 1863, when the rules of football were written, the average goalkeeper's height was 5'4.5".
Yeah.
It's now nearly a foot taller.
But you seem to be missing my point. My point is that if the entire sort of population of the world is getting taller and taller, everything's going to have to be knocked down.
Of course it is. That's what I told you.
You won't be able to get in a lift at Talk Sport.
No, exactly. That's exactly what I'm telling you.
You won't be able to get in cars. Cars will have to be bigger.
The rest of the world's not taking any notice of me.
Imagine the size of a plane. It's got to put people in it that are all 8 feet tall.
Yeah, exactly. Huge.
I think it'd get off the ground.
I'll tell you what, we won't be able to get on a horse because you crush the horse.
Surely the horses will be 12 feet tall.
No.
08717 223344. We've got loads more to do. Gareth A. Davis is coming up. Mike Porky Parry and myself as the two Mikes will be back on Thursday night for a 3-hour special. We may explore some of those bizarre notions of his coming up then. There'll be a podcast later on today on iTunes. Look out for it on social media. We'll be telling you where to go and find it.